Hi. Did you know your body's like a bank? It's full of fat storage and muscles and all kinds of other things. But did you know that until you figure out the exact combination or the keys that go into the lock of your individual body, you will not be able to burn fat? What is causing all this trouble? It took me a long time to figure it out for myself, and I hope to save you some time so that you can skip to the head of the class and get things moving for yourself. So welcome back to Amazing Wellness Life. I'm Vicky. As always, all of this information is just for you to learn. It's not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. You've got your own doctor. You could talk to them about it. That'd be great. What causes us to hold on to and store fat? Well, we've talked about it before. It's the insulin in your bloodstream. And what is insulin anyway? I thought it would be super important that you understand insulin is not the enemy. Insulin actually helps you and it keeps you from having all kinds of other problems. But when it's out of control, you can develop something called insulin resistance. Doesn't sound very good, does it? So let's go back to the beginning and explain exactly what insulin is and how it functions inside your body. First time I ever heard the word insulin was because one of my grandmothers had diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and she could have died if she didn't have insulin as a medication. She would literally give herself injections of insulin at 4:30 in the morning before she had breakfast. It looked really complicated to me, and I never understood that my own body was creating insulin too. And so does yours. So it's nothing to be afraid of because it's very natural. When you eat food, it gets digested, and the carbs and sugar actually turn into glucose in your bloodstream, and you're only allowed to have a teaspoon of that at any one given time. So how are you going to get rid of it? Well, that's where insulin comes in because it's the master hormone, and it will send the glucose out to the cells, and if they can use it, they will use it. But unfortunately, they can't always use it all, which means a lot of that glucose could go to the muscles or the brain, but a lot of times it ends up in the fat cells, which is just where we don't want it. So is there any way to stop this vicious cycle of storing fat? Well, yeah, there is. So there's 4 different things that Dr. Bikman talks about, Benjamin Bikman. He talks about his 4 pillars. One is lower your carb intake and sugar intake. That's really important. The other one is prioritize protein. That's why I'm always talking about, are you eating enough protein and not fearing fats? The one time you don't want to eat fat, though, is if you're eating a bunch of sugar and carbs. That's not a great time because it's not going to help you. But if you're prioritizing protein and you're eating more good fats with the protein, because they have a minimal impact on blood glucose. So they're like eating free food. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment about what you already knew about insulin or insulin resistance. And sometimes I use olive oil and things like that just as a nice way to get more fats into my diet. Frequent fasted state. Now, what does he mean by that? Does that mean you have to stop eating? Well, I believe that we can all agree that in America, we eat all the time. We eat way too much. If we could give our bodies a little bit of a window where we're not constantly putting more and more carbs and sugar in there, then we're going to actually enter into a fat-burning state. And I love that. It's actually a natural state that we had as a baby. So babies are the best fat burners in the world. They all have those little chubby cheeks. Well, that's because when they're in utero, they have to have a lot of fat because they're not going to be able to eat regular food, and they're probably going to breastfeed and things like that. So babies actually have lots of fat. And when they're not eating, the fat on their body is fueling their brain because their brain is the most important organ that they have. And so developmentally, the brain is going to be prioritized over the rest of the body. That's why they don't walk right away and things like that, because they're just too busy building their brain. Well, their brain is running on a lot of ketones. So babies are literally the most ketogenic people of all. And then comes toddlers, because toddlers still have lots of baby fat. And then children transition into puberty, and then their muscles grow more if they're boys, and unfortunately for girls, we get more fat. So that's just the way it is. And basically, girls have more fat because they need it. They're going to be the mother and have a baby at some point, possibly. And so, and they want to be more attractive and things like that. But we have more estrogen in our bodies, and that's why we do have more fat cells than men do. As men and women go into middle age, they have more, their hormones change and they have more and more fat deposition. The reason I wanted to show you the progression of the human body was because sometimes when I'm watching little children, they never sit still. They're constantly moving. That's one of the reasons that they burn so much of their fat is they're always running around. But also there is a phase difference in everyone's life. The first 20 years of your life, your body is so focused on growing your body because you don't have enough skin, hair, all of the things that make up your body. It's just really busy growing the rest of your body. And that's when insulin is doing its best work. And when it's growing a baby, it's doing its best work. But what happens is if we continue to put way too much fuel into our body, we become metabolically inflexible. So there's metabolic flexibility, which is basically you're able to take the energy that the insulin is sort of pushing into your cell and you can use it. But what happens if you become insulin resistant is you no longer have the ability to use up that extra glucose. And your body gets numb to the insulin knocking on the door. It gets numb to the fact that it wants you to take more, but your cells are not responding anymore because they're too full. And so how do we drain those and how do we become more flexible? Well, we've talked about that. We've talked about the steps of how to do that. I just wanted to share a few thoughts from Dr. Benjamin Bikman because he talks about how you can have perfectly normal blood glucose levels. Like if you have an A1C, which is like a 3-month average of what your blood sugars have been, you could have a totally normal A1C3 in the 5 somewhere. And people that aren't healthy, generally like diabetics, have, like 6.5 or 7 or 10 or 15. I knew a lady with 15 once. What you don't want is you don't want your 3-month average to be off, but your 3-month average can look perfectly fine, but you might actually have the beginning of insulin resistance. And I'm going to list a few of those so that you can see what those might be. One of them is a little scary because after, the age of 40, most of us have a larger waist than we did when we were 19. It's not just the fact that you're an adult now, because you were an adult at 21 and whatever your waist circumference was at 21, I bet it's not that now. I know mine's not. We talked about this before. What your waist circumference should be for an average woman should be between 32 and 35 inches. For an average man, it should be between 32 and 40 inches, and just depending on people's height and things like that. But that's one of the signs of insulin resistance, that you're putting on too much fat around the middle of your body. And so hold on, and we'll do the other signs of insulin resistance too, so that you know what they are. One of them is high blood pressure. How many people have high blood pressure and have no idea that it is one of the signs of insulin resistance? Another one is high triglycerides. If someone has high triglycerides, it's possible that they have the beginning of insulin resistance. So if you have a high blood glucose on a regular basis, that's a sign too. And the last thing that is a sign of insulin resistance is if you have low HDL, which is the good cholesterol that you're supposed to have. So there you have the 5 different signs that you might have the beginning of insulin resistance. And just because your blood glucose levels look pretty good, you actually might have a high insulin resistance. One more thing that you can do to help yourself is to build your muscles, your legs, your buttocks, your arms. If you can strength train and build your muscles, it can really help you to soak up some of that glucose after you eat your meals, and it helps with the insulin resistance. Let's listen to Dr. Benjamin Bikman because he talks about the metabolic syndrome and about insulin resistance and how dangerous it is, because it's actually the thing that leads to all the other diseases, which I don't think any of us, if we knew that, we would be so much more careful about what we're eating and when we're eating it and the types of exercise that we're getting and things like that, because just having your insulin go up a little bit means the fat cell is locked. You can't burn fat and have high insulin at the same time. It's not possible. And so that's why this issue is so important. So let's hear what Dr. Benjamin Bikman has to say.
Mentioned, which is reflected in the prevalence of the metabolic syndrome, but it is so important because of its relevance, where every single chronic disease is in some way influenced by insulin resistance, where insulin resistance is either directly causing the disorder or it is facilitating the disorder.
So this is incredible. 1 out of every 2 people, so 50% of the world's population is metabolically unhealthy.
Of the metabolic syndrome, they have higher blood pressure, they have dyslipidemia, they have elevated waist circumference, and the clinician is only measuring the glucose, which is coming up as normal every time. And so they say everything's fine.
This was very sad for me to hear, because for 20 years you might have insulin resistance and not even know it, because there's no easy way to measure it in the doctor's office. So really, you need to think for yourself and try to help yourself.
However, if they were to expand their view of the problem to include insulin as a marker, they would find that insulin levels can be elevated up to 20 years before glucose levels ever start to change.
So guys, this is when I began to realize that I had elevated insulin for years, because I was having all the signs, or at least a lot of those signs. And it wasn't until I changed a lot of things that I began to have success, not just losing weight, but feeling better, sleeping better, moving better, having less pain, a lot of things. So I'm sort of begging you to think about what is going on in your life and recognize the signs and symptoms. You might not have all 5 of them. You may only have a couple of them, but they're important to pay attention to, because your body is trying to tell you it's not functioning at the highest level that it could be. So I'm begging you, reevaluate your own wellness and think, am I as healthy as I used to be? You don't have to accept the fact that I'm just getting old. Oh, well. No, you can create your own wellness by taking control of your life.
The insulin levels are going up higher and higher and higher over the years. It is the canary in the coal mine, or the early warning that something is wrong.
So I don't think that we can do any more in this video. I'm going to leave the link to Dr. Bikman's original video that I studied and learned from. It was great, but it was so much technical detail. So I hope this has been helpful to you. And if it has, please like and subscribe. It will help someone else. And also, you can share this. Share it with a friend or a loved one, because, we all need to take care of the people in our lives. Anyway, thanks for stopping by to see me again on Amazing Wellness Life, and I hope you have a wonderful week.